Hello and welcome back to Christie's Cozy Corner. And if this setup and this outfit looks familiar, it's because I just filmed my October TBR and now I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up. So, September was the first month that I had a designated TBR for myself. And I said that if I didn't read those books in September, like I said I would, then I would quit reading forever. And it's okay to shame me. Well, I am glad to say that I did indeed read those books. So there'll be no quitting reading and no shaming here today. Although, okay, I will say that I didn't quite get to finish Fool's Errand in September, but I'm very close to finishing it, and I will be finishing it in the next day. So I'm gonna excuse myself for that, okay? So, September. Honestly, it was a fantastic reading month for me because everything I read was 5 stars. Granted, 3 of them were part of one trilogy and it was a reread, so I knew that I was gonna love it. So I read a total of 5 books, which is my lowest reading month so far, but that is okay because I read Oathbringer, and that counts as like at least 2 books. One of them was also Mistborn Secret History, which is like a novella, so like maybe it cancels out, like okay, whatever. Okay, so starting off, we're gonna talk about Mistborn Secret History. I started reading Oathbringer, but then I accidentally started spoiling myself for too many things, so I was like, okay, you know what, like stop. Just stop right there. I'm gonna drop everything else that I'm doing and start reading Secret History right now. And honestly, there is literally nothing that I can say about this book because anything that I say could potentially be a spoiler. Like, even the synopsis of this book itself is like, even knowing the existence of this book is in and of itself a spoiler. So I'm gonna be keeping myself completely tight-lipped about this. Actually, I do want to talk about it a little bit. So I will put a big old spoiler stamp on the screen. So if you haven't read this book, then just skip this video to whenever the big spoilers disappear. So anyway, Mistborn Secret History. I didn't actually rate this book because I feel like, I don't know, there wasn't really like a rating that I could give it. But if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a 4 stars. It was like a pretty solid read, and there were some scenes that, made me tear up. So, okay, anyway, getting into the spoilers now. So, for everyone who has read this book, you know that this book is about... Oh, and when I say spoilers, I mean there are spoilers for the entire Mistborn trilogy as well, okay? Like, I'm assuming that if you're in this part with the spoilers for this book, you have read the entire Mistborn trilogy. Okay, final warning now. Okay, so anyway, so this book is about Kelsier after he died in the first Mistborn book, and I just knew that there was gonna be something about Kelsier. There's always another secret. And even before reading this and before I reread Mistborn, the first trilogy, like, there was just always something about Kelsier that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I didn't dislike him as a character, but he always did come across as kind of a jerk and he thinks he's a good guy, but he's got this darkness inside him that I feel like doesn't get fully addressed, but we get more of it in this novella now. And yeah, Kelsier, he is like, the first thing that he does when he dies and meets preservation is punch him in the face. Like, how arrogant and self-important do you have to be to do that? And oh my god, the scene where the Lord Ruler dies and appears in that area, and Kelsier is like, he's about to throw hands, and the Lord Ruler was just like, you again? Like, I thought I got rid of you already. Why do you keep coming back? Whatever. And he just fucks right off, and Kelsier is just like, he left? Like, that's it? That's all there is? And then also seeing him fight Hoyd, like literally a fist fight, and getting the shit kicked out of him, I was like, yeah, that was deserved. For everything that you do, you deserved that one. So yeah, I had a really great time reading this, and of course, when Vin and Elend appeared at the end of it, I cried. Just the idea of Vin and Elend and everything that they went through in their lives, and now they're like, they lived their lives and they're content with where everything ended up, and they're just kind of ready to move on now. And then they left, and it's like, we'll never see them again. And then also, poor Spook, man. Like, what did he do to deserve this? Having Kelsier show up again and be like, all right, Spook, you and me, it's gonna be the two of us and we're gonna do this thing together. And Spook is just like, huh? What? Do I get a choice? So at the end of this book, there's like a lot of potential for where it will go next, and I feel like we're gonna see a lot more of Kelsier in The Lost Metal. And even though he died in the very first book of his own series, Kelsier feels like he is probably one of the most important characters in the Cosmere, like in the grand universe of the Cosmere. So yeah, that was Mistborn Secret History, and after that I went back to Oathbringer and finished that up, which I of course gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Like, is there any world where I don't give a Stormlight book 5 stars? And I'm not giving it a 5 stars because it is Stormlight and because it is Brandon Sanderson, okay? This book was actually so good. Like, I was so into it. And even though it is over 1,200 pages, like, it does not read that long at all because the writing and the world, it's just so gripping and you fly right through it. And I have a whole dedicated video specifically for Oathbringer with all of the spoilers, so I will point you in that direction if you want to hear more of my spoilery thoughts on Oathbringer. But as for non-spoilery thoughts, I don't know if I even have any non-spoilery thoughts. Like, how do I even talk about this book without talking about the spoilers? But yeah, there were definitely things that happened, things that we find out about characters and about the world, and some of which I actually predicted, but doesn't make them any less mind-blowing. And of course, I just love these characters so much, and I love seeing even more depth from these characters than we have before. Oh right, forgot to hold it up. Oathbringer. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say about Oathbringer. If you want to hear more thoughts, then definitely check out the other video that I did for it. It was like an almost half-hour video of just me talking about everything that happens in this book. And then of course I read the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, my favorite series of all time. This first trilogy is so nostalgic to me. It is of course a reread. When I first read this series 9 years ago, it's actually one of the first fantasy series that I ever picked up. By the way, the copy that I have here is signed. So anyway, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, the first book in the Farseer trilogy. This series is about our main character, Fitzchivalry Farseer, who is a bastard from the Farseer line, the ruling family in this kingdom called the Six Duchies. And the series is like an older Fitz recalling his life starting when he was 6 years old, when he was first brought into this world with the royal family and getting involved in all the politics. And this first book just very much follows him as he's growing up in this kind of environment. Like the first few years of his life, he is kind of just like meandering here and there, growing up in the keep until he officially catches the attention of his grandfather, the king, King Shrewd. And that's when the king hatches a plan, because to be a bastard in the royal family is to be a threat to the royal family, because it causes all this confusion when it comes to the royal succession, and also he is in a position where someone else can potentially use him against the royal family. So King Shrewd is like, before someone else has the opportunity to do that, he will ensure that Fitz has complete loyalty to him first. So that's how Fitz gets roped up into becoming an assassin. And of course, he is the apprentice to the royal assassin. And one thing that I know that people have spoken negatively about this series and Fitz is that, like, he's an assassin, but like, where is the assassinating? Where are all the assassinations? Which I don't agree with, because when it comes to these situations, especially all of these political intrigues, like, if you have someone who very blatantly, openly assassinates your enemy, like, it's obvious that it was you, okay? And it just creates more turmoil and it doesn't solve anything. It just throws everything into chaos. But the kind of assassin that Fitz is the very quiet kind where you don't even know that that is what happened. And he works much more with poisons. So like, there's someone that you want to get rid of and they are slowly starting to be poisoned, and eventually they become sick and they die. So it's not like obvious that they were assassinated. And I just find that so much more intriguing and more compelling than just like someone comes in with a knife in the middle of the night and kills you in your sleep, you know? And also he doesn't only just kill, he is also placed in situations strategically so other pieces can move on the board. But this series is definitely very slow paced and character driven, very focused on our character fits and just his life in general. And everyone is right when they say that this book just kicks you right in the emotions. And Robin Hobb just does such an amazing job with getting you attached to these characters. And like every character feels so real because they have like legitimate flaws that almost make you dislike them at times, but also makes you really understand who they are as a person. And there's just so much depth to every single character. And also Robin Hobb just has such a way with weaving words together and conveying such real human concepts in the way that she puts these words together. Like there are some things that I feel I don't know how to put it in words to express them, to capture that specific feeling, but somehow she is able to do that in her writing in this series. And I definitely want to make a dedicated spoilery chat video for this entire series, so don't know when I'll be able to get to that. I need to put together all my notes first to make sure that I touch on everything that I want to touch on, so that will be coming. I just don't know when, so stay tuned for that. And the second book in the series is Royal Assassin, and this is the book where all the heartbreak just happens. And I mentioned before, the song Hand of Sorrow by Within Temptation is actually based on this series. And if you haven't heard the song, then listen to it right now, because listen to the song, and if you like those vibes and you connect with those lyrics, then you will definitely love this series. And I feel like this book specifically, this second book, Royal Assassin, is the one that the song is most linked to, because this is the book where Fitz goes through the most personal and inner struggles between his loyalty to the crown and his duties, but also wanting to live a life of his own and having someone that he loves and wants to share his life with, but he has to constantly lie to them because he can't reveal the true extent of who he is without betraying the crown and revealing the crown's secrets. And it's just so much. Everything happens so much. This is definitely my favorite book of the trilogy, but it's also the one that just made me the most angry, because there are characters in this book and things that people do that just have my blood boil. Ugh, never has another book riled up my emotions more than this book. And there are some people that I just hate so much. Like, I did not know that I was capable of this much hatred until I read this book. And I feel like over the years, I have mellowed to those feelings, but when I reread this book, it just brought all those feelings up to the surface again and reminded me, like, oh yeah, like, I hate things, I hate people, but it is absolutely an amazing book. And of course, other characters that I love them so much. And a new character gets introduced in this book that is just like one of the best characters of all time. And this is also the book where we get to see more of the Fool and seeing their friendship develop. And I just love Fitz and Fool together so much. I ship them so hard, and they are like my number one OTP of all time. But yeah, definitely don't read this series if you're not prepared to be emotionally battered. And honestly, like, I am not exaggerating. Like, you know how sometimes when people can like oversell you something and you get your expectations really high, but then when you read it, it like doesn't meet those expectations, or it's like not as intense as they made it seem. Like, I don't know if there is a way for anyone to emotionally prepare for this series. So I'll just leave it at that. And then the final book in the series, and the last book that I read in September, was Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, the last book in the Farseer trilogy. I remember when I first read this book, I actually did not like it as much. Like, the first half of the book, I legitimately thought that I was gonna give it a 3 stars, but then the ending was just absolutely spectacular. Anyway, I reread this, and you know, I love the first half this time. I definitely can see why this is the weakest installment of the series in a lot of people's opinions, because the first half is kind of very meandering, because like the title of it says, he goes on a quest. And what is a quest but without a bunch of different little side quests? So Fitz does get involved in a bunch of like miscellaneous kinds of things, but all of it is to get him to where he needs to go. So I can see why some of the choices were made the way they were in the plot, at least in the first half. But then the second half is when we actually get to like the meat of the journey. And I love reuniting with some of these characters and seeing all of their interactions and deepening their bond even further. And I also know that a lot of people have some complaints about the ending and the way that it ended. I do feel like Robin Hobb endings are quite abrupt. Like the majority of the book is paced quite slowly and things kind of just gradually occur, but the ending is just like bam, it happens, and then you get a small conclusion and that's it. So I can definitely understand those criticisms, but I still loved it. And I just love how quiet everything is. I don't know if there's another way I can describe it. Words kind of flee me right now whenever I'm talking about a series that I really love. Like I cannot words. When it comes to things that I rant about and I hate, like I can go on and on and on. But when it comes to something that I love, I'm just like, what did I love about it? I don't know. I just did, okay? And my arm is sore from holding up all those books for so long. But needless to say, that entire series is a 5 out of 5 stars for me. It is my favorite series of all time, and rereading it, it just further enforced that. Like, it's one of the first fantasy series that I read, so I didn't have like a whole lot to compare it to, but when I read it, I was like, oh my god, this is so good. And now, after having read a whole lot more fantasy and picking this up again, I'm like, yeah, this is legitimately good and it holds up. So I really don't know how coherent any part of this video is. We'll see how it comes together in editing. So that's future Christie's problem. But I definitely want to talk more about this series and go into more spoilery discussions in a separate video. So like I said, I will be working on that video. And yeah, that is everything that I read in the month of September. So that was a total of 5 books. And how many pages was it? There's like 1,200 for Oathbringer. I think Secret History is like, let's say 100 pages. So 1,300 plus Assassin's Apprentice, which is 400. So that's 1,700 plus Royal Assassin, which was like 700. Where was I? So that's 2,400. So yeah, that is about 3,000 pages total read in September, which, like I said in my October TBR, that is like a very standard volume for me. And also I read all of these books physically as well, including Oathbringer. So I feel like that kind of slowed me down a little bit as well, because I definitely read a lot faster when I'm immersion reading, which is when you read the physical and listen to the audiobook at the same time. Anyway, I have rambled on long enough already. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. And I will see you again in my next one. Bye!